It's 2:30 p.m. and the final bell has just rung at your high school. Hundreds of teenagers are spilling out the double doors, laughing, talking about their weekend plans, heading towards the yellow school buses. It's the most normal, everyday American scene you can possibly picture. But then the screaming starts. Right there on the grass, in broad daylight, in front of a crowd of young high school students, a 17-year-old girl is fighting for her life. It's her own father. And her mother is standing right there, watching, helping, and cheering him on. This isn't a scene from a movie, you guys. This happened outside Timberline High School in Washington State. It was a brazen, terrifying daylight ambush. And the reason behind this horrific attack? The teenage girl had simply wanted to be a normal American high schooler. She had refused an arranged marriage. She had a boyfriend. And in the eyes of her parents, she had hurt the family's so-called honor. Today we are talking about a case that will make your blood absolutely boil, and if you have been watching this channel for a while, you know deals with a topic that is so close to my heart. We are going to talk about the reality of honor-based violence happening right here in the West. We're going to look at the incredible, unbelievable bravery of the high school students who literally risked their own lives to save their classmate. This is the survival story of Fatima Ali. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Zara, and on this channel we dive deep into true crime cases. We don't just look at the headlines, we look at the psychology, the systemic failures, and most importantly, the victims who deserve to have their stories heard. If you are as passionate about unpacking these complex, often frustrating cases as I am, you have definitely found your community. Please take a second to hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss out on weekly videos. And seriously, smashing that like button helps the channel out so much. It tells the YouTube algorithm that these stories matter, and it helps us get these survivors' names out to more people. And if you want to become a more active part of this amazing community, I'd absolutely love for you to consider becoming a channel member. When you join, you get instant access to our private Discord server, and that's where we can keep the conversation really going after the video ends. We can share theories, you can request cases, and honestly, we can just support each other, and you're also supporting the channel. And let's face it, consuming true crime can be really heavy, and having a safe space to decompress with like-minded people is everything, and especially on topics as heavy as these are. So I am there every day, and so is Jay. So if that sounds like your kind of place, just click the join button right below this video. All right, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and a quick trigger warning, because this case deals heavily with domestic violence, child abuse, and the terrifying dynamics of honor-based violence. It's a very heavy and frustrating watch. Let's break down the attempted honor killing of Fatima Ali. Let's rewind and start with looking at the environment Fatima was living in. Lacey, Washington is a suburb of Olympia. It's peaceful, it's suburban, it's the kind of place families move to for good schools and quiet neighborhoods. And at Timberline High School, you have a massive mixing pot of teenagers from all different backgrounds. At the center of our story is Fatima Ali. She was born in the year 2007 in Iraq to her parents Ihsan and Zara, and she had 3 siblings, including 1 sister and 2 younger brothers. And in the fall of 2024, Fatima was 17 years old, and by all accounts, she was a bright, normal, happy, vibrant teenager. She had dreams, she had friends, she liked going to school, but Fatima was living a terrifying double life, as they usually are. Fatima's parents, 45-year-old Ihsan and 41-year-old Zara, had immigrated to the United States from Iraq. Now, I want to make something crystal clear right from the start. This is not a case about an entire religion or an entire culture. There are countless immigrant families who come to Western countries, beautifully blend their cultures with their new environment, and raise happy, thriving children. But that's not what happened with Ihsan and Zara. They brought with them an incredibly extreme, deeply patriarchal, and rigidly fundamentalist worldview. They lived physically in Washington State, but psychologically their household was a fortress governed by an archaic set of rules. For Fatima, stepping out her front door to go to school was like crossing an international border every single morning. At school, she was surrounded by American teenagers who had freedom. They could date, they could wear what they wanted. They could choose their own friends. They could plan to go to college. But the second she walked back into her parents' house, she was essentially stripped of her autonomy. She was treated not as a daughter with a future, but as property. Her parents maintained absolute tyrannical control over her life. She was not allowed to act like the other kids. She was not allowed to have male friends. She was heavily monitored. And as Fatima got older, as she started to figure out who she was and what she wanted out of her own life, the tension in that house became a ticking time bomb. Because in the eyes of Ihsan and Zara, a daughter's independence is not a sign of maturity, it's a threat. It's a sign of rebellion. And most dangerously of all, it's a stain on the family's honor. So we need to pause for a second and actually talk about this concept of honor, because it's the entire motive for this crime. When we hear the word honor in Western society, we usually think of something noble, integrity, doing the right thing, bravery. But in the context of extreme patriarchal cultures, honor means something entirely differently. Honor, or izzat in many South Asian and Middle Eastern countries, it's a family's reputation and social standing within their community. And here's the sickest part. For some reason, that entire reputation is placed squarely on the shoulders and the bodies of the women and the girls in the family. If a man does something wrong, it's, a mistake. But if a woman does something perceived as wrong, like refusing an arranged marriage, wearing Western clothes, having a secret boyfriend, or even just being a victim of an assault, she has shamed the family. She has destroyed their honor. And in the twisted logic of these specific extreme families, there is only one way to cleanse that shame and restore the family's standing in the community: blood. And this isn't just domestic violence. Normal domestic violence is usually about power and control within a private relationship, often hidden away behind closed doors because the abuser mostly knows what they're doing is wrong. But honor-based violence is so different. It's often planned, it's premeditated, and sometimes it's even celebrated by the extended family. The perpetrators genuinely believe they are the victims, that they believe that they are righting a wrong. They believe society expects them to punish their daughters to prove they are strong, respectable men and their family names are worth respect. It's just a completely warped, sociopathic justification for child abuse and murder, really. And according to the AHA Foundation, which advocates against honor violence, there are an estimated 23 to 27 killings in the United States every single year, honor killings. And these aren't just happening in remote villages across the world. They are happening in suburbs like Texas, New York, and in Lacey, Washington. And Fatima was living in this exact ideology. As the year 2024 rolled around, the situation in the Ali household escalated from strict parenting to absolute psychological terror. Fatima, like a normal 17-year-old girl, had met a boy at school. His name was Isaiah. They liked each other. They started dating. In any other family, this might have led to a lecture about curfews or keeping your grades up. But in Fatima's house, this was basically a death sentence. And her parents somehow found out about Isaiah, like they always do, and their reaction was quick, brutal, and terrifying. According to later court testimonies, Ihsan and Zara didn't just ground Fatima, they threatened her life. They told her that she was a disgrace. They told her that because she had been with an American boy, she was ruined, and they gave her an ultimatum. They were going to pull her out of Timberland High School, put her on a plane, and ship her back to Iraq. Once there, she would be forced into an arranged marriage with an older man to cover up her shame. Her life, her education, her future, it was all going to be erased. Now, they didn't let her know about this ultimatum, so was it even really one? In October 2024, Fatima actually overheard her mother Zara on a phone call to her aunt. She was discussing travel plans to Iraq for her younger brothers, and the trip was actually to arrange for them to get Iraqi passports, but for Fatima, it was to get in line. Her older sister Haneen later confirmed that the trip to Iraq was to get her married. And then to further illustrate the absolute insanity, her mother Zara, she attended the high school on September 16th, 2024, and attempted to kidnap Fatima's boyfriend, Isaiah. She tried to grab him, apparently, and then separate him from Fatima. And then apparently his father, Victor, witnessed this and believed it looked like an attempt to kidnap Isaiah. So due to this, she was actually banned from attending the high school grounds. And Isaiah's father, Victor, eventually got a restraining order against Zara to protect his son. So around the same time in early October 2024, her parents withdrew her from Timberline High School and enrolled her into online courses. Can you even imagine this? You're 17 years old and you're born or at least raised in America. You have rights, but the two people who are supposed to protect you are actively plotting to traffic you to a foreign country and sell you into a forced marriage. It's the stuff of absolute nightmares, because as if, human trafficking and those fears of you being kidnapped aren't bad enough in today's world, the fact that your own parents are willing to do that. Also, I tried to find if her siblings kind of went through the same kind of treatment, and realistically, I'm guessing they also weren't allowed to just do whatever they wanted, but it did seem like Fatima was the one facing the most extreme pressure to culturally conform, but that could also be because she was the one who did not conform. But later, Fatima stated that her parents were horrible in general to their entire family. Fatima later stated in court that her sister Haneen was battling or had battled cancer, and her parents were so ashamed of her for having cancer that they would beat and hurt her during her treatment. And her youngest brother, who's only 3 years old, had autism or has autism, and Isan and Zara believed he was just acting, so they would yell at him and beat him. And I can't even fathom parents who could do this to their own children, let alone a 3-year-old, suffering. And the other brother was 4 or 5. And it's you're beating these little kids and then you're beating your child who's battling cancer. What is wrong with you? I mean, it's all alleged, but if it's true, these parents piss me off. And that's what I love so much about Fatima. She did not break. She did not just put her head down and accept this horrific fate. She fought back. Soon after Fatima got confirmation that she was going on a one-way flight to Iraq, her mom told her to pack her bags earlier in the week. She was meant to fly out on a Friday. And Fatima knew that if she got on that plane, she would never be seen again. She would disappear. So she did the bravest, most terrifying thing a teenager can do in her position. She planned her escape. Fatima knew her flight to Iraq was booked for Friday, October 18th, 2024. And in the days leading up to the flight, Fatima panicked, thought about telling the authorities, but knew she would be trying to navigate a system that often doesn't fully understand the unique, severe danger of honor violence. Often police or school counselors will try to mediate and say, let's call your parents and work this out. But Fatima knew that going to a family meeting wasn't going to fix this. A family meeting was going to get her killed. So Fatima woke up at 4 a.m. on October 18th. She packed a bag with her clothes and toiletries and took $100 of her mom's money with her. She went to the bus stop and took a bus to Walmart and Safeway because Timberline High School was still closed. She planned to go there and speak to a school counselor once it was open, but suddenly she sees her mom and her sister Haneen on the streets looking for her. So she ended up hiding, and eventually she was able to get on a bus and get to the school by 7:30, and then she went straight to her history teacher's classroom. So she spoke to her teacher, Mr. Thomas, and then she ended up going to the counselor's office, and she spoke to Miss Robinson and told her about her situation. She said she felt unsafe and that if she did fly to Iraq that day, she was never going to return. So Miss Robinson was able to lead her to a youth shelter, and Fatima could stay there, and then she was given a blanket and a computer to take with her when school finished. Despite the horrific situation she was in, Fatima still wanted to complete her online classes. If that doesn't tell you something about her, she wasn't out here trying to escape her parents because she wanted to, be with boys and party. She wanted to just finish her freaking education. Fatima stayed at school until it ended at 2 p.m. and she thought that, surrounded by teachers, security guards, and hundreds of students, she would be safe. But she was dead wrong. So let's walk through exactly what happened on that Friday afternoon, because the sheer brazenness of this attack is what makes it so mind-boggling. Isan and Zara were furious. The fact that Fatima had escaped, their property had escaped, and gone to school nonetheless. What a horrific thing to do. Their honor was now stained, and the whole community knew their daughter had run away. They had spent hours tracking her, and they knew she was still attending Timberline High School despite them pulling her out of it. At around 2 p.m., as the school day was wrapping up, a car pulled up into the area of the high school. I believe they had a parking lot section near the school, and inside that car was Isan and Zara. They weren't there for a parent-teacher conference. They were hunting. The final bell rings, the door opens, and a sea of teenagers flood out towards the bus stop. Fatima is among them. She's walking with her boyfriend, Isaiah, and Miss Robinson, and then a few other friends. Miss Robinson leaves her, on the school grounds, and then Fatima and Isaiah, they continue walking towards the bus stop, and kids are chatting, probably just relieved that the school week is over. And then suddenly, her parents spot her. Fatima doesn't see them at first, so she continues walking to the bus stop with Isaiah, intending to go to the youth shelter for that night. Fatima is wearing black pants, a hoodie, a beanie, and had a face mask on, and she stands at only 5'1" tall. She's pretty small. And as Fatima is walking to the bus stop, she sees her dad's car. Now, what happens next unfolds in a matter of seconds, but it feels like an eternity for the kids who witnessed it and for Fatima. Isan bursts out of the vehicle and sprints towards the crowd of students. He doesn't yell at Fatima to come over. He doesn't yell her name. He just lunges at his 17-year-old daughter like a predator taking down his prey. In front of over 10 other young students at the bus stop, Isan grabs Fatima and begins talking to her. It's kind of a calm conversation, but it's intense. But he's telling Fatima she needs to come back home, and she replies that she doesn't want to go back home. Isaiah is right beside her. He's patting her on the back to comfort her. Isan, through a gritted smile, told Fatima that it was wrong for Isaiah to be even touching her. The bus finally arrives, and as Fatima tries to get on the bus, Isan grabs Fatima's hoodie, pulling her back. Isaiah tries to push him away, but Isan's just strong enough and just pushes him away. And witnesses would later testify to the sheer look of rage on Isan's face. He grabs Fatima violently. He immediately goes for her neck. He wraps his arm around her throat in a brutal, tight chokehold. He begins dragging her backward away from the bus doors towards his car. And Fatima is screaming. She's kicking. She's fighting for her life. But Isan is a grown man and he's cutting off her air supply. Fatima begins to see black. She sees people holding phones and she sees Isaiah and a friend coming for her, but she's reaching for her neck, trying to get free. Fatima couldn't breathe. She had dirt on her face and body as she was grappling with her father on the ground. She was in a lot of pain. And where is her mother during all of this? Is she screaming for him to stop? Is she trying to protect her baby girl? No. Zara is right there beside him. And according to witnesses, Zara is aggressively grabbing at Fatima, pulling at her clothes, trying to force her into the car as well. She's shouting curse words in Arabic. She's an active, willing participant in the attempted abduction and possible murder of her own daughter. As Isan squeezes tighter and tighter, he's allegedly screaming at the top of his lungs in front of everyone, I'm going to kill you, you're going to die today. And Fatima's eyes begin to roll back. She's gasping. Her knees start to buckle. She's losing consciousness. Now, this is the moment in this story where a tragedy usually becomes a fatality, and the bystander effect is a real thing. Usually people just freeze. They pull out their phones to record, but they don't actually do anything to help. But not these kids. The students at Timberland High School are the absolute heroes of this story. Isaiah, Fatima's teenage boyfriend, sees her father choking the life out of the girl he loves. He doesn't hesitate. Isaiah throws himself at Isan. He starts throwing punches, desperately trying to break the father's grip on Fatima's throat. And Isaiah wasn't alone. Other high school kids who were just worried about math tests and football games 5 minutes ago, drop their backpacks and rush into the fight. They swarm the parents. They're pulling on Isan's arms. They're shoving Zara back. They're screaming at the top of their lungs for Isan to let go. And because of the swarm of brave teenagers, Isan's grip breaks. Fatima collapses on the ground, gasping for air. She's clutching her bruised throat, and she manages to just escape and run back into the school. And a bystander named Josh Wagner, he's able to restrain Isan and detain him on the lawn near the scene until police could arrive. Seeing that they're now outnumbered by a mob of angry, protective high schoolers and hearing the sirens approaching, Isan and Zara realize they've pretty much failed. Zara becomes hysterical, and at this point, Haneen arrives and sees her father being restrained, and then she becomes hysterical along with her mother. They're screaming that Isan is being hurt and to leave him alone. And I know a lot of people, are angry at Haneen's reaction, but I believe she's just brainwashed. The fact that she's wearing a hijab and dressed modestly, is in stark contrast to Fatima, who chooses to dress as a Westerner, meaning to me that she chooses to follow what her parents want, or she herself chooses to do so. And, who can blame her? Because technically, if she didn't, she would be facing her parents' wrath too. And I don't feel sorry for Zara, because as a mother, no matter what you've been through, once you have a child, you hold and nurture and raise that baby. How can you harm them? So Zara, no, she can piss off. The police response is massive. When 911 gets a call about a potential kidnapping at a high school at dismissal time, every available unit responds. They find Fatima hyperventilating, surrounded by teachers and her boyfriend, and she has like visible dark red marks all around her neck, classic signs of manual strangulation. And her voice is raspy and she looks terrified, but she's able to tell the police exactly who did this to her. And it doesn't take long for the Lacey Police Department to track down Ihsan and Zara. He's being detained and Zara's there screaming hysterically. So Ihsan is arrested and brought into the interrogation room. And then Zara and Haneen are actually sent back home. And Ihsan wasn't charged with murder, so he gets released that same day. And this, you guys, is where the defense strategy starts to take shape, right? A strategy that is so manipulative and so infuriating. So when the police sit Ihsan down and ask him, why he just tried to choke his daughter to death in front of 100 witnesses, he doesn't break down in tears. He doesn't ask if she's okay. Instead, he plays the victim. He tells the police that this is a huge cultural misunderstanding, and he claims he wasn't trying to kill her at all. And he says, I'm a strict Muslim father. My daughter ran away. She was being disrespectful, and I was simply trying to bring her home to discipline her. You Americans, just don't understand our culture. Zara basically echoes the exact same sentiment. She completely denies Ihsan choking her daughter, and she denies threatening her. She claims they were just trying to get their runaway teen back into the car, back home, and just talk some sense into her. So let me stop right here and let's look at this a little bit closer. They tried to use their culture. They tried to use their religion as a shield for child abuse and attempted murder. And, I find this incredibly offensive, and I know millions of people do, around the world, because strangling a 17-year-old girl until she passes out is not strict parenting. Dragging a screaming child across a lawn while threatening to kill her is not discipline. It's a violent felony in every single country, in every culture, and in every religion on this planet. Once investigators got their head around the incident, the video footage, and Fatima's testimony, Ihsan was rearrested and his bail was set at $1 million. Zara was also arrested and her bail was set at $500,000, and then they were both charged with attempted murder. But the parents pretty much stuck to their story. They banked on the idea that an American jury might be too afraid of appearing culturally insensitive to convict them. They thought they could just gaslight the justice system. But the prosecution in Thurston County were not buying it. They looked at the red marks on Fatima's neck. They looked at the fact that she had run away, terrified of forced marriage to an older man in Iraq. They listened to the dozens of high school students who heard the father scream at his daughter, "I'm going to kill you." And, I'm going to kill you can sort of be excused because you're like, it's just a figure of speech, but the fact that he had his hand around her throat, choking her till she was purple in the face, is that still, a figure of speech? Ihsan and Zara were hit with massive heavy charges. The top charge was first-degree attempted murder, and along with attempted kidnapping, assault by strangulation, and domestic violence charges. They were going to trial. The trial of W.A. versus Ihsan and Zara Ali began in August 2025, and it was heavily covered by Court TV, and it became this national spectacle because it wasn't just a trial about assault. It was a trial putting the concept of honor violence under a microscope in an American courtroom. I pretty much watched all of the videos Court TV put out, and it's honestly shocking. Ihsan and Zara just have these blank faces the entire time, as everyone's talking, even as Fatima's testifying and talking about what happened, and they're just sitting there with these blank faces. The prosecution came out swinging. They painted a chilling, meticulous picture of a premeditated honor killing that was only prevented by the sheer luck of these teenagers intervening. They brought in the high school students to testify. Can you imagine being 16 or 17 years old and having to sit on a witness stand looking across the room at the grown man you fought off? These kids were incredible. They testified clearly and consistently. And honestly, they sounded much older than they were. And they told the jury, he wasn't trying to hug her. He wasn't trying to guide her to the car, even pull her to the car. He had her in a chokehold. Her feet were dragging. She was turning purple. He yelled that she was going to die that day. Isaiah and his father, Victor, even testified as to Zara's assault on Isaiah, how she didn't care. And Isaiah talked about how scared Fatima was of her dad and how her entire body began to shake when she realized they had come to the school. The prosecution brought in experts on honor violence. They explained to the jury that in these specific extreme cases, the parents view the child as property and that it must be destroyed as they are defective. They explained the threats of the forced marriage to an older man in Iraq. They established the motive. Fatima's independence was the catalyst for her parents to decide that she had to die. But unfortunately, the judge decided to strike any mention of honor killings or arranged marriages because he ruled that the use of those terms were too prejudicial. But the most heartbreaking, powerful moment of the entire trial was when Fatima herself took the stand. And I want you to really think about the immense, unimaginable courage it probably took for this girl to do this. In her culture, to speak out against your parents is the ultimate betrayal. She knew that by testifying, she was going to be severing ties with her family forever. She knew that she was putting herself in the national spotlight. And she had to sit in that courtroom feet away from the two people who gave her life and then tell the world how they tried to take it away. Fatima was trembling, but her voice was strong. She told the jury about the terror of living in that house. She told them about the threats. She told them about how her mother looked at her with pure hatred. However, she did claim that she did not believe her mother had tried to hurt her during the assault. And she described the moment outside the school. She described the feeling of her father's arm crushing her windpipe, the panic, the darkness closing in as she started to pass out, truly believing that her life was ending right there on the grass. How her mother did nothing to help her. Instead, her mom grabbed her too, by the throat, holding her down for her father. And I think it's really important for you guys to actually hear Fatima's statement, so I'm going to include what I can over here.
The fact that you knew that I couldn't breathe is one thing, but now I have so much to say, but I can't even look at you. I'm scared of you, and you made me want to kill myself. You make me want to do things that are bad, but at least I can control myself. You know how much pain I went through? No, because you're not my family. Like, why do you have to make everything so toxic? Why do you have to be this way? Why am I your blood? Why? And you were with me for most of your life, and you saw me as a baby, but you still decided to kill me. You saw me grown, and not only that, I saw you hurt my young sister and my younger brothers. And you're gonna act like you didn't. My sister had cancer and she was already in pain. You made it worse. Why? And why would you hurt her when she's going through cancer? You're a monster, and I can't believe you're my dad.
There was not a dry eye in the gallery. Fatima didn't just survive an honor killing, she stared her abusers down in a court of law. The prosecution centers on the fact that Ihsan's intention shifted from trying to bring his daughter back home that day to actively trying to kill her right there at the bus stop during that assault. They said that while he may have not come with the intent to kill, his actions changed. The prosecution argued that you cannot strangle your child to restrain them. That in no way makes sense. The video evidence showed Ihsan holding Fatima in a chokehold while her face turned purple and her eyes rolled back. They argued her mother Zara was an accomplice who provided zero aid to her child and instead held Fatima down or grabbed her neck to prevent her from escaping while her husband strangled her. Zara was also already banned from the school grounds and had knowingly, violated the court order. Medical experts testified that Fatima suffered from pneumomediastinum, which is air trapped in the chest cavity, and then she exhibited physical symptoms of significant strangulation, including petechiae, which are small, red spots on the eyes, I think burst blood vessels, and then she also had difficulty swallowing. After the prosecution rested, it was now the defense's turn, and their strategy was exactly what we predicted. The cultural misunderstanding defense mixed with a heavy dose of victim blaming. The defense attorneys stood before the jury and tried to paint Fatima as not a terrified victim fleeing a forced marriage and abusive household, but as a rebellious, out of control, lying teenager. They argued that she made up the story about being sent to Iraq to get sympathy from her friends and boyfriend, and they said she was just a dramatic teen who didn't want to follow her parents' rules. They said the parents had the right to control their 17-year-old daughter who ran away, that the trip to Iraq was just a way to hit the reset button and get Fatima on the right track, and that there was no so-called forced marriage arranged over there. Regarding the attack at the school, the defense completely downplayed the violence. They told the jury, Look, things got heated. Yes, it was an ugly scene, but this was a father trying to restrain a hysterical runaway child. He put his arm around her throat to guide her back to the car, and in the chaos, as all the other students attacked him and punched him, his arm slipped up to her neck in a chokehold. They argued it wasn't strangulation, it was a botched restraint. They argued that there was absolutely no premeditation, no plan to murder, and if he wanted to kill her, the defense argued, why would he do it at 2:30 p.m. in front of 200 witnesses? He would do it in secret. He was literally just a frustrated father trying to get his kid in the car. They said it was just a chaotic family confrontation that lasted only 53 seconds. And they further said that the situation only escalated because Isan was being dragged and punched by people he didn't know. So let's talk about the footage of the assault for a second. Okay, so from the released footage that I have here, I believe it's from the bus camera's angle. Isan has already attacked Fatima and she's on the ground. She's trying to get up, and then Isan punches what looks like possibly Isaiah with the Nike backpack, and Fatima kind of walks away before Isan comes back to her and strangles her from behind, dropping them both to the ground. And then you immediately see a bunch of kids, including Isaiah, punching and kicking and pulling Isan to get him off Fatima. The bus driver then goes to intervene, and then adults even get out of their cars, on the road, to help Fatima. You can see Isan is relentless. He does not let go of her. And Fatima very quickly begins to go limp. She can't fight for long. She's tiny. So even if the entire chaos lasted 53 seconds, Fatima could have very well been killed in that moment. Isan does not look like he's doing anything other than trying to kill her. They said Zara was only there to protect her daughter from the chaos and to help her husband. They used Fatima's own testimony where she said, I don't believe my mom was trying to hurt me, to support this argument. They said due to the language barrier, Zara did not even understand the protection order against Isaiah and the legal restrictions that followed it. This entire argument is so infuriating because it makes logical sense if you don't understand honor violence. Yes, a normal murderer tries to hide their crime, but honor violence isn't about hiding. It's about making a public spectacle. When a father kills a daughter for honor, he wants the community to see it. He wants to send a message to other girls in the community. Look what happens if you disobey. He wants to restore his public standing by showing that he has control over his household, that he's the man. Doing it in front of the school wasn't a mistake or proof of lack of intent. It was the entire point. It was a public execution of her independence. But the defense just kept pounding on this idea of intent. And in Washington state law, to convict someone of attempted first-degree murder, the jury has to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant took a substantial step towards causing the death of another person with the premeditated intent to cause that death. The defense kept asking the jury, did he intend to kill her right there, or did he intend to kidnap her to take her home and punish her? If he only intended to kidnap her, then he is not guilty of attempted murder. It was a legal loophole. And unfortunately, that defense's strategy of sowing that tiny little seed of doubt about what was exactly going through Isan's mind in those 5 seconds, was about to pay off. In late August 2025, after hearing all of the emotional testimony, the cultural experts, and the forensic evidence of strangulation, the jury went into deliberation. The entire community of Lacey and the true crime watchers across the nation waited, holding their breath. Everyone thought this was a slam dunk. We all heard the students testify that he yelled, "I'm going to kill you." We saw the bruises on Fatima's neck. We all watched the video. But when the jury foreman stood up to read the verdict, the entire courtroom gasped. On the top charge of first-degree attempted murder for both Isan and Zara, the jury returned a verdict. You guessed it. Not guilty. I remember watching this and my jaw literally dropped to the floor. How? How do you acquit a man who chokes his daughter until she passes out while screaming he's going to kill her, who doesn't let go despite 10 people pulling him off, punching him in the head? But the jury wasn't done. They acquitted them of attempted murder, but they did convict them of lesser charges. And Isan was found guilty of second-degree assault by strangulation, unlawful imprisonment, and domestic violence. And Zara was also found guilty of unlawful imprisonment and assault as an accomplice. The outrage online was immediate. People were furious. Advocates for victims of honor violence were devastated, saying that this verdict sends a pretty terrible message to immigrant girls across the country that if your parents try to kill you for honor, the American justice system might just view it as, strict parenting gone wrong. But we have to look at the legal loophole here, right? Jurors later spoke anonymously to reporters, and they said that it's not that they didn't believe Fatima. They did believe that she was abused. They did believe that she was terrified, but they got stuck on the legal definition of intent to murder because the attack was so chaotic and because the father didn't have a weapon like a gun or a knife. Some jurors felt that the prosecution didn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that his primary goal in that exact second was to murder his daughter rather than kidnapping her to force her onto a plane to Iraq. In their minds, intending to kidnap her and force her into an arranged marriage is horrific and illegal, but it technically isn't intent to murder right there on the grass. It's a deeply infuriating nuance of the law, isn't it? The legal system demands a black and white box of intent, but honor violence operates in this terrifying gray area of control, shame, and reactive rage. So it looks like in this case, cultural sensitivities are more important than justice. Because they were acquitted of the attempted murder charges, Ihsan and Zara evaded the potential sentence of life in prison. Instead, based on the assault and kidnapping convictions, they were sentenced to significant but much shorter prison terms. On August 18th, 2025, Ihsan received a sentence to a total of 20 months in prison, but because he was in prison since the 2024 attack, he's expected to be released sometime in the first half of 2026. He was given a 10-year no-contact order with Fatima, a 24-month no-contact order with Isaiah, and 18 months of community service, a parenting class, and domestic violence evaluation. Zara received a slightly lesser sentence as an accomplice, so she got 364 days in jail, but credit for time served. So she had spent 10 months in detention during the trial. So she was released right before her sentencing even, which is a joke. She was released in July 2025. And she also had a 24-month no contact order with Isaiah. They are free. And that's the terrifying reality that Fatima has to live with. So we're left with this deeply complicated case. Yes, the parents served time behind bars. Yes, they were convicted of violent felonies and they are now registered felons, and their tight grip of control over their daughter has been permanently severed by the state. But has it really? The fact that they were acquitted on the attempted murder charge leaves a really bitter feeling. It exposes this massive blind spot in our justice system. We need judges, juries, police officers to be better trained in the specific lethal dynamics of honor-based violence. We need them to understand that a threat of forced overseas marriage and abandonment is a threat to a person's life. We need them to understand that strangulation in public is not a parenting technique. It's attempted murder. But amidst all this frustration, the shining light of this entire dark case is Fatima. Fatima is a survivor in the truest sense of the word. And in cases like this, we don't often get to speak to survivors. She stood up to a culture of silence. She stood up to her abusers. She walked into a courtroom and, spoke her truth, knowing it would cost her everything she had ever known. And because of her bravery, she's free today. She's now 18 and no longer someone's property, and she gets to decide her own future. She gets to finish her education if she wants, and she gets to date whoever she wants and live her life on her own terms. She broke a generational cycle of abuse and control, and I have absolutely no doubt that her courage has inspired other young women trapped in similar situations to seek help. And we can't forget the students of Timberline High School. To Isaiah and to every single teenager who dropped their backpack, and to the adults who threw themselves into a violent situation to save Fatima, you guys are the definition of true heroes. You didn't just pull out your phones to film it for TikTok. You acted. You saved her life. You actually give hope for the next generation, guys. I want to know what you guys think about this case. Does the jury's decision make sense to you from a strict legal standpoint, or do you think they completely failed Fatima by acquitting her parents on the attempted murder charge? How do we better protect these teenagers who are facing threats of honor violence and forced marriages in other countries while in the West? Realistically, her parents are free. Do you really think Fatima is safe? She's only 18, she would be receiving support from the state and her friends. Will her parents really obey the no contact order? Ihsan and Zara still have to care for Haneen and those two young boys who are technically still babies, 5 and 8 years old, little boys. What are their lives going to be like? Please, guys, let's have a respectful, thoughtful discussion in the comments below. Please don't talk about races and countries and attack that, because that's not what this case is about. I will be down there reading your thoughts. You know how much these cases mean to me. And if you found this case important and it opened your eyes to, a different type of systemic issue, please give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a case. And if you or someone you know is facing honor-based violence or the threat of a forced marriage, please reach out to your local domestic violence hotlines. You are not alone, and there is help out there, and you deserve a happy life. The resources are also linked in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and look out for each other. And I'll see you in the next video. Besitos. Bye, guys.